Thanks for taking time to listen to this episode of the Real ResQ podcast. Take a minute to go to therealresq.com to check out these and other great deals from our sponsors here at the Real ResQ. This episode of the Real ResQ podcast is brought to you by Breeze Eastern, the world's only dedicated helicopter hoist and winch provider. Axness, because when lives are at stake and conditions are challenging, clear communication is of the utmost importance. Life Saving Systems Corporation. We do our work so you can do yours. Tough gear for tough jobs. And SR3 Rescue Concepts, because you don't know what you don't know. Breeze Eastern. They dedicate themselves to our helicopter rescue world. Since the very first helicopter rescue in November of 1945, Breeze Eastern has designed and manufactured superior rescue hoist solutions. While much of the technology and the unique mission requirements have changed over the past 75 years, their commitment to the rescuers, the operators, and those being rescued has not. Contact them today by visiting them at breeze-eastern.com. The Axness PNG wireless ICS system can bring cutting-edge wireless intercommunication system technology to any aircraft. The PNG system can be fully integrated into an existing ICS system or can be carried on and off as a mobile base station. They can go anywhere at any time on any aircraft. Plus, with the strongest and most robust waterproof handheld on the market, this system can take a hit and keep working. Their wireless intercom systems are designed to enhance situational awareness through improved communication capability. This system brings superior noise canceling technology to eliminate rotor wash and engine noise from your ICS. The Axness PNG wireless system is currently deployed in more than 1,800 public safety, air ambulance, and search and rescue aircrafts worldwide. I have personally used the Axness system in 4 different countries and on 5 different airframes. It is awesome. If you want more information, contact them today at axness.com. That's AXNES.com. You just make sure you tell them Quinny sent me. Life Saving Systems Corporation. They manufacture the world's toughest helicopter rescue gear. From my favorite harness as a rescueman, the Triton harness, to the rescue baskets, the litters, and of course, the most popular hook in all helicopters, the D-Lock. The team at LSC will cut, bend, sew, weld, and machine these products into existence every day. We do our work so you can do yours. LSC. Tough gear for tough jobs. Check them out today at lifesavingsystems.com and follow them on Instagram at Rescue Gear. That's at RESQGEAR. And SR3 Rescue Concepts is a training company that can help with your helicopter training, a standardization and safety check, or maybe just an audit or an FAA refresher. They are here to bring your agency up to date with the most current techniques, rules, regulations, and equipment. The training staff is awesome. With the certified flight instructor pilots, experienced crew members, which I am happy to say that I am one of them, they offer training in rescue, medical, tactical, firefighting, ground operations, and night vision goggle use. SR3 is also partnered with Petzl to assist with personal protective equipment and the highly specific Lazard. SR3 also goes beyond the helicopter world as they provide high-angle rescue training and tactical medicine training. Contact them today at sr3rescueconcepts.com or over on Instagram at sr3_rescue. Our next guest coming up had an incredible career in the U.S. Navy, and I am so excited to have him on as a guest. We talked about some of his early deployments, his first time in the water, and then going after some crazy stuff down in the Caribbean tour, and then Katrina and Rita and everything in between. Even though you guys don't get to hear everything in between, it was an amazing career for this guy. So please welcome our next guest, United States Navy rescue swimmer, Mr. Ken Smith. My name is Jason Quinn. I am United States Coast Guard Rescue Swimmer number 500. These are my rescues and rescues from those of us that put our lives on the line every day so others may live. This is the Real ResQ Podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Real ResQ Podcast. Today I've got another Navy swimmer with me. Totally stoked to have this guy with us. Please welcome Mr. Ken Smith. What's up, Ken? How are you, buddy?
Not bad, Jason. Glad to be here.
Dude, I'm stoked you're coming on, man. I said it before, but I'm going to say it again. You Navy boys, you're coming out of the woodworks right now, man. Come on. I'm digging it.
We're all over the place.
Yeah,
I think we're all over the place.
I think there's more Navy rescue swimmers than there are Coast Guard rescue swimmers, so it might turn into like all Navy here shortly.
Well, there's a lot of good stories, and I think the commonality between swimmers in both services, we just don't get nearly as many rescues in a frequent pace as you guys do, for sure.
Yeah. Well, I'll agree with that, but I'll tell you what, some of the stories I've heard so far are amazing, and I'm looking forward to getting into some of yours too. So it's awesome. But I'll tell you what, man, let me not delay this anymore. Please give us a little background, your name, who you are, where you're from, and how you got into the Navy.
Okay. My name is Ken Smith. I joined the Navy in 1986. I grew up in Palmyra, New Jersey, and then I moved to Atlantic Beach, North Carolina. And in that area, I actually met my wife. So I was a young 19-year-old. I met a beautiful 26-year-old that had one child, and we were married 6 months later. So
nice.
Pretty much the moment I met her, I knew I had to do something to be able to take care of this family. And that place, you either worked in the restaurants or on the boat. So let me see, the movie Top Gun came out. So I'm a Top Gun baby, like so many people.
Snap.
So, that was clearly one of the motivations to join the Navy, but it was also in the wake of of what ended up happening with Gaddafi. So, you had the Gaddafi event occurred the first time, and, so I was feeling kind of patriotic, and I joined the Navy. I went in November of 86. Following that, November of 86, I had an awesome recruiter, and he told me the best case scenario is the apprenticeship training program. So you get to see all the jobs and then pick the one you want. It took me about 2 seconds in boot camp to realize that was not reality. Not at all. Not reality.
I love it.
So my company commander, he told me, he said, top 10% gets an A school. And about 60% had an A school. So when I walked through the door, I knew I was in trouble without one. So I was top 10%, and I found out he was a liar. So off to apprenticeship training I went, and I got to apprenticeship training, and a guy named 81 Prevo, wherever you are, thank you very much. You changed my life. I was nice. Top 10%, and I went and picked AW, which is Aviation Warfare Systems Operator. All I knew was I was going to fly. I knew nothing about rescue swimmers yet at the time. So after that happened, I went on got to Pensacola. I show up. I'm so green and so new. I show up, I'm in uniform, and the aircrew barracks there was like Animal House. It really was. Students were running the quarterdeck, showed up on a Friday night, so you can imagine what it looked like. But there was a pool table on the quarterdeck, and I'm so regimented now from boot camp. I'm like, hey, what do I do? He's like, just come back Monday morning 0700. I'm like, can I take a shower? He's like, you could take a shower till Monday morning 0700 if you want. I had to go buy civilian clothes. I didn't have anything. I had nothing at the time. So it was a real eye opener, So then I started air crew, and we were driving in a van. And I can remember we're driving in a van, and I see like 3 guys on crutches, one guy with like his arm in a sling. And I'm like, who are those guys? And he's like, those guys were rescue swimmer students. And I'm like, really? And, for some weird reason, I was like, I want some of that.
Oh my gosh.
So, while a lot of people knew they were going to rescue swimmer school, I didn't know anything about it at the time. And, if I'm a fair evaluation of my own ability, I was not a great, I never had any formal swim training. But back then at that time frame, the Navy needed swimmers so bad. Yep. So if you passed the 500 yard swim in under 11 minutes, whether you wanted to or not, you're going to SAR school.
No way.
So, so people were going to SAR school who did not want to, and other people, like in my case, I'm busting my butt to get underneath that 11 because I wanted to go to SAR.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah, the caveat at that time, which was, I really feel bad for a lot of people on this, is, they came in with a contract to fly, but if they swam fast enough and they went to SAR school, you didn't make it through SAR school, then you went to the fleet undesignated. So
yeah,
it was all or nothing. If you can't pass the school, you're probably carrying chocks and chains on an aircraft carrier.
Oh man, like put the feet to the fire. Come on.
Yeah, pretty much. So I got into SAR school, and I can remember pretty much from day one. I mean, we had Zelenak, Blevins, who were some of the other names I jotted down. I mean, just amazing guys that through the Navy, if you were to turn around and take a look at these guys, they're people that, everybody knows, Deaton, Donovan. Some of those names are kind of known as notorious for being involved with the Marecki incident that occurred later. Right. But the reality is they were giants and they were legends. The SAR school was phenomenal at that time.
Yeah. Now and at that time, you actually had a couple Coast Guard guys with you as well, right? Because that should have been Coast Guard.
Yeah, we did not have any in my class at that time. Later on, we had a lot that were coming through, but exposure to the Coast Guard when I was going through as a student, didn't see any of those guys right there and then. SAR school was pretty uneventful for me. My wife was pregnant with my first child while I was in SAR school. Oof. And everything kind of great shot, no rollbacks, no issues. And then I got to the day before the final multi. Yep. And I'm in the pool doing multis, and I had just watched, this is kind of funny when you think about it, I had just watched the previous multi that a guy was on. He tried to get somebody out of the raft, and he got pulled into the raft. And I remember seeing him stripped buck naked, thrown into the pool. So, in my head,
gosh,
I'm like, do not get pulled into the raft, so.
Oh, wait a minute. So he got pulled into the raft by the guys in the raft, stripped naked, yes, and then thrown back in the pool.
Yes. Yes.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Okay. You know what? Thank you to all of my instructors for not doing that to me. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
I end up going, and in my head, I'm like, do not let them pull you in the raft. Do not let them pull you in the raft. I was 5'8", all of a $135. So I weighed like next to nothing. If they ever got leverage, there was going to be nothing I could do. So I get over to the guy.
I don't care who you are. That is pretty funny.
It's hilarious. I get over to the guy in the raft, and these guys are huge. And he reaches behind him, grabs the back of my SAR harness, and flips me in the raft. And I'm like, no. So I turn around, I jump, I hit him with my shoulder, and I flip him into the water. So now I've got him in the water. And it's a guy named Randy Donovan, phenomenal human being, amazing swimmer. I'll also go ahead and say a unearthly amount of denseness to his bones and his body, because he doesn't float. So I've got him. Back in the day, you took your flotation on, you put it on the Survivor, you blow it up. I've got it totally blown up, and the guy's still sinking. And I'm like, I'm kicking. We get over to the rescue hoist, and they got the sprinklers going on, and he's grabbed a hold of the hoist now. And I know I've got to get the strap up underneath his arms and everything. And they were always talking about use leverage. And so I reach around and I grab his pinky, and I'm like, let go of the hook. He's like, no, let go of the hook. And I just keep prying back. I guess I hit his pain threshold, because when I did, I think he tried to use the hook to turn around and spin and face me. Instead, what he did was he went whap. And I'd already lost my mask. My mask was gone, but he hit me right over my eye. And I'm sitting there, as soon as he did that, I just craned and rolled over on him. And, I'm holding him under, trying to get a little bit of compliance. And when I do that, I'm just watching red pour into the pool.
Oh,
and
gosh.
There was an instructor, Cowan, up in the tower. And he's like, Smith, are you okay? And I'm like, I'm fucking fine. Leave me alone. Because all I can think in my head is, you're getting rolled. You're getting rolled.
Yeah.
I have no idea how big the gash is, but it's gushing. So about that time, I pull Donovan's head back up. He gets some air. He's ready to whoop my ass. But Cowan's in the tower, and I can see Cowan doing this while I'm trying to get control of
abort.
He's trying to tell him back off. Yeah. I finally get him. We hook up. We get up into the tower. And as I'm coming in the tower, I'm like, don't roll me, don't roll me, don't roll me. And so we finished that up, and they're like, hey, go see the corpsman. I can't remember his name now, but he was teaching the medical class to the junior class in the classroom at the time.
Okay.
So I knock on the door while he's teaching the class. I come in, and my face is just covered in blood. My white t-shirt is covered in blood. And I'm like, hey, can I speak to you for a minute? Now all these guys, they're week 2 guys, and they're like getting ready to start multi. Like all their faces go white when they see me. They're like, holy shit. So I got lucky.
This is awesome. Oh, gosh. School. I love school.
Yeah. He's like, if I send you to medical, they're going to give you stitches. You're going to be rolled. So instead, what he ended up doing, he put butterflies on. My final multi probably wasn't as hard as some of the other guys in the class. I'm guessing, it certainly didn't feel easy to me, but I'm sure the instructors were like, oh, we busted that dude's eye. Let's not make this a case. I graduated there.
Man, well done.
Was my experience.
Oh gosh, I love school stories. They're so much fun. Yeah, like everybody's got one or two of them. Man, I can't say that I ever got hit so hard I was bleeding all over the place. So you got that one. You can have that one.
I will say, so when I went through, it was pre-Marecki timeline. So the end of week 1, we had Hell Day, where you went in first thing in the morning. And I think we went, and forgive me if I ever get timelines a little off, but I think it was about till 8:30 at night. And it was just, 7.5 mile run, full beat down for the whole day. So it was our big gut check. The other thing that I remember that really stuck out in my mind, with this being the pre-Marecki phase, was we had a guy in our class, I think his name was Hobbs. And when we got to doing Sharks and Daisies, which was part of our Hell Day, it was, you just swam in circles with your hands behind your back, and instructors took turns jumping out of the tower, doing whatever. And when they hit you, they would tell you what to do, and you would make an effort to perform that maneuver.
Wow.
I remember we had this kid named Hobbs, and I'm going to go ahead and say I never saw him touch the side of the pool. Back during that time period, as best as I understand, and this was a little bit that I learned later when I went through instructor training, and this is how I recall it, so I could be off slightly, but you could not DOR, and this kind of leads to what happened later. you couldn't DOR until you completed the evolution you were on.
Oh,
So,
interesting.
So when you were doing breaks, holds, and releases, there was so much pressure on the instructors to get people out the other side of the course. You couldn't quit until you completed the evolution. So they're, and this kid Hobbs, I saw him come out of the pool. I never saw him touch the side. It's kind of like a porpoise.
Yeah.
I saw him wrap his arms and legs around equipment rack pole, and he's screaming, "I DOR" at the top of his lungs. Guess what? 4 instructors pry him off that pole, threw him back into the pool.
What?
Afterward, he DOR'd, but to the best of my recollection, there was no quitting in the process when it got to breaks, holds, and releases.
Wow. It's amazing how things change and like just throughout evolution, throughout like the training regime, people come out, things happen, and all of a sudden you're rewriting curriculum and making it a little different than one set or another set, but trying to make it better. And at the same time, you're like, oh, that's like old school good, like whooping.
I'll definitely say I don't know how great we were trained back then, but I know everybody was tough.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Take a licking and keep on ticking. Come on.
That's it.
Oh, that's funny. That's awesome. All right. So now once you get out of school, you went to where?
So after SAR school, we went to our A school where you learn, in our case, we learned how to track submarines. So after that, you go to your fleet replacement squadron in the Navy. And I went to HS1, got through there, relatively easy, no big issues. And then post that, I ended up checking into HS11, Dragon Slayers, great squadron, phenomenal people. We had a long time there with no chief petty officer. So we had some amazing first classes that led that squadron and did the best they could, which was pretty awesome.
Sweet. So now what was interesting, so like I said, you and I kind of talked a little bit offline, but you, the first time you entered the water was, or deployed to the water as a rescue swimmer, was not so much for a rescue, but for something else. And I'm excited to hear this. So what happened?
Yeah. So what ended up happening was we were in the North Atlantic, and, so I don't know what the water temperature was, but it was a lot colder than 50 degrees. And basically all the E2s on our aircraft carrier had gone down. So we were down to one E2 left, and the other was down for parts. So we had been waiting for parts forever to get the other one back up. Well, a cod landed on the aircraft carrier deck, and while it was offloading, they turned an F-14, and it blew all the mail and everything that just came on that cod. A good chunk of stuff blew right over the edge into the ocean. So we get the call, and they're like, "Hey, Smith, you want to go for a swim?" And me being probably 21 years old and young and not really thinking about it, not realizing how cold that water was going to be, I'm like, hell yeah. So now that this is in the wake of the aircraft carrier, so again, me being young and not so wise, I didn't really think about the fact that in between launches and recoveries, they dump the sponson, and that's when all the trash goes over the side. So when they start putting me in the water to look for this part that's supposed to be in a box, there's lots of boxes around. I get lowered in the water, I swim from one to the next, and I'm opening these boxes, and it's like raw hamburger. I get to the next box, it's like spoiled cabbage, and that's about the time when I start thinking about, hey, you're in the food chain, and you're pretty close to the bottom. So I think I did that. I think I was in the water for probably 10 minutes swimming from thing to thing. And, you know, we never found the part or recovered the part that we were actually looking for. But I can remember, you know, by the time they hoisted me out, I couldn't feel my fingers. And, you know, back then we didn't have dry suits. It was just wet suits, those thick ones with the gloves that were made you like the Michelin Man. And, you know, I get out, I get brought back onto the flight deck, and, they got blankets and stuff for me. And I can remember our pilot going to the ATO, the air transfer officer, and he's like, "You owe him a bottle." Like, next time we pull in. And, you know, it was kind of funny because we went straight from there down to the Caribbean, and he ended up buying me a bottle in a bar. You know, so he probably paid 3 to 4 times the amount for it. And, you know, I'll say 3 to 4 times the amount, and I didn't need it. But I got good and toasty on that.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. But, you know, one of the things that really struck me when I go back and I look at that tour is I can remember the first time I was launched for the Alert 30 in the middle of the night. And that to me was a very sobering experience. You know, being a rescue swimmer, everybody in the Navy is trained. You want to get that rescue. You're always waiting for the call. And, you know, we're Alert 30, so we can be in our racks. Yeah. And I'm sleeping in my rack, and, you know, the man overboard, you know, starts going off, and, you know, I'm out. I'm deep in sleep, and somebody wakes me up. They're like, "Hey, Smith, man overboard." I'm like, "Okay." And I'm thinking, you just mustered me. I'm still laying there.
Yeah, I'm accounted for.
Yeah. He's like, "No, you're SAR." And I'm like, "Oh shit." So I turn around and I grab my stuff, and I'm running down the O3 level. We've got the knee knockers, which are about maybe 8 to 10 inches off the ground. You're going through these like hatches, but I'm like at a full sprint, and I get right in front of CAG, which is where the carrier air group commander is. And he steps right out in front of me while I'm in a full sprint.
Oh, geez.
And all a $140 of me, knocked him on his ass. He was way bigger than me, but he's laying on the ground. He looks up at me, and I'm like, "Oh shit." And he's like, "Go get him." I'm like, "Roger that." So I run.
That's awesome.
And we're probably off the deck in about 15 minutes. Now for us, this is before the days of NVGs. So it's nighttime. The seas are heavy. And what had actually led to us launching, I mean, it's the North Atlantic, so anybody who knows the seas knows it's pretty tumultuous up there. But what had led to us launching was the flight deck was secure, and I guess one of the vehicles on the flight deck had not been fully chocked down well enough and chained.
Okay.
So they were sitting up in the tower, and they see this vehicle go flying across the flight deck and off. So in their mind, somebody was on it. So we get launched, and, I'm fired up. I'm like, I'm ready to get my first rescue. And, we're flying out there, and every wave crest, the little white, and all you have is a spotlight. Every wave crest looks like it could have been a hand reaching up, or somebody in the. So, at first 5-10 minutes, I'm excited. Then at 10 to 20, I start thinking, man, I really hope nobody's in the water, because I'm not sure we're going to see them if they are.
Right.
In about 30 minutes and the third full cruise muster, they realized they had everybody and they recovered us. But, that was one of those times where you went from, boy, I sure hope I get a rescue, to, boy, I sure hope nobody's in the water and in trouble, because, I wasn't sure we'd find them that night.
Wow.
And, we got lucky and nobody was in the water.
Man. Yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about too. Like the white crest, and I think I see something. Nope, just across the water and coming over. Like, oh my gosh. I know exactly the feeling you're talking about. It's crazy. Dang,
absolutely.
Man. Holy cow.
So on that tour, we did a North Atlantic cruise, and then we did the Med IO. And, kind of a crazy story. We had a chief there for a little bit that he was so worried about sea snakes in the Indian Ocean. And there were a lot that he had declared for a little bit that we would wear full Farmer John wetsuits in plain guard, and
In the middle of the Indian Ocean.
In the middle of the Indian Ocean, so
for the record, so everybody that doesn't know that, it's really warm down there, and it's like bath water. To wear a full Farmer John, you'll be like dehydrated and just heat exhaustion, if not heat stroke, in the first 20 minutes of being in the water. You're out of your mind.
Well, not even in the water though, because we're flying the whole time the air was
yeah.
No. So you're wearing this during a 3.5-hour flight and just dying. I don't think that lasted more than a day, but that was just complete total insanity.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And not to mention, they'd have to like get you between your fingers or in some odd place because their mouths don't open that much.
Right.
So really, we were worried about nothing, but it definitely made it a lot more interesting for a period of time, for sure.
Oh, that's funny.
But that was pretty much it for my time at HS-11.
Right on. So from there, you end up. Go ahead. Where's your next spot?
Okay, so from there, I really wanted to be a rescue swimmer instructor. I remembered when I was a student, those guys looked like gods, and I thought, give me some of that whipping rather than getting whipped. So I went there, and I was in Navy instructor school, which is before you went to the rescue swimmer instructor school. But I was in Navy instructor school in Tennessee when the first Gulf War broke. And, I was almost inconsolable at not being with my squadron as that happened. So I called the detailer at the time, and I think it was Craig Dickover. So if you can imagine, you have a detailer and his name is Dickover. I got to know him later. He's a phenomenal guy, but
at that moment in time.
Now, actually, he gave me great advice.
Good.
And I think it was Craig that was there at the time. I know I had another time with Craig later, but he said to me, actually, it might have been the detailer before Craig, but the detailer said, "Hey, look, I'll send you back to your squadron, but it's for another full sea tour, or you can continue and go on to SAR school." And I waited and went to SAR school. And luckily, the war was over like lickety split, and I didn't lose my SAR school experience.
Cool.
But getting to SAR school, that was an absolutely amazing experience. I mean, I got to work with some of the best guys in my mind in the Navy. We had legends like Russ Carr, Gary Telecki, who was a notorious AW. Some people would say infamous, phenomenal human being. Rick Tavner, John Baring, just countless amazing people. And, the thing is, and I'm sure you've been around them, when you get dropped into an environment like that, you're around all uber excelling people.
Yes.
And it just makes you want to give 100% of your best just to be there. So, I was there. I think I was a pretty good instructor. I think I had a propensity to get to the gray really fast. I would ride that line of what you could do and what you couldn't do. And
nice.
quite a few times, I think I tumbled head over heels.
It happens.
Onto the inside. But it's funny, a lot of people that became, real dear friends to me later were actually my students in SAR school.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
cool.
And, I'm actually my business partner now, Joe Sabia. He mentioned, he's like, do you remember me in SAR school? I was like, hey, man, sorry, no. Not just off of the beginning piece, but, several of the guys that I became dear friends with later were guys that I actually had that experience where they had a rocky point and something was going bad. And, being the, I guess, angel of death, for some reason, I turned into an angel of mercy and helped these guys get on the right course at that point in time.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah. I hope that I can do the same to some people. Like there are guys in my life that have done the exact same and given me either a piece of advice, a direction, and turned my life into a better direction. And I'm very thankful for them for it. So the fact that you could say, or they could say that you did that for them, that's awesome. Super stoked.
Yeah, it's very humbling, especially when you realize, if you take a look at all of us, depending on what day they meet you and what the circumstances are, you may be an angel or you may be a devil. And I think we all have that duality in us, especially in an environment like that. I'm sure I was the monster to a lot more people than I was a savior to, in that point in time. But, I would like to give, a little bit of credit. We had some leaders there in that schoolhouse that were phenomenal. My first team leader when I got there was a guy named Kurt Stuman, and Kurt really helped put me and the guys that I was with on the right path. And I think Kurt was just following Senior Chief Chris Mitchell's, how he set the pace for that entire schoolhouse. We were a lot like a bunch of rowdy pirates, but if you heard Smith, Senior Chief wants to see you on the bridge. First thing you did, you popped up, you walked over to the mirror, you checked your uniform.
Do I look good? Do I look good enough to go see the man?
Oh, exactly. Your uniform's normally nothing more than a t-shirt and a pair of UDTs, but you were making sure your shit was tucked in. And
I need a different belt. This one's got a scratch in it. Oh my gosh.
And it looked 100% right, because as soon as you walked up to him, every single time, he'd look you in the eyes, look all the way to your feet and back up to your eyes. So that standard was really good. And, the other thing I'll say was we were on that base at that time under his leadership. We were untouchable. Literally. Now, Senior Chief would whoop our ass, but nobody else on the base could touch us. We were 100% underneath his protection, and it was pretty amazing.
Wow.
Some of the other guys there that really, inspired me. We had Andy Truman. The guy smoked like a chimney, but he ran like a gazelle. Pretty amazing. John Baring, dear friend of mine, and Russ Carr. Those guys were, they taught me a lot about leading, but, not just leading, but leading by example, and that was a schoolhouse where, you couldn't just sit there and stand and tell people, hey, do push-ups. You had to be able to do. And if you wanted to be able to get in there and crush the students, you had to make sure that you were doing it too.
Oh yeah.
And that was, that was a really good life lesson. It's like, hey, you want to crush the students? You better get good at something. Whether it's flutter kicks, push-ups, you name it.
As a student, when you look at your instructors getting down there with you doing the push-ups, you get a more respect for them moving forward.
Absolutely.
And none of my instructors were ever on the side of the pool deck just yelling. They were always either running, there were guys in the water with us. I had a lot of respect for all of my instructors. I had a great school. All the way around.
I can only imagine. So talking about that, we had a guy named Steve Larotti, a Coast Guard guy. He was one of our instructors there. Phenomenal human being. Had a crazy sense of humor and probably the weirdest laugh, because he'd be like, is that Steve?
That's funny.
So I came over, I checked in the fleet replacement squadron, LAMPS, East Coast. So that's how I went from, so LAMPS is Light Airborne Multi-Purpose System.
Oh, yeah,
So
yeah. We were talking about that earlier. Okay.
Right.
Yep.
So it is a helicopter that's designed primarily for anti-submarine warfare, and they deploy on the smaller boats. At least back in the day, things have changed drastically as time has gone on, but they were the smaller deployed aircraft. So that's how I ended up changing from an HS, which is helicopter, which was primarily plane guard and anti-submarine warfare, 4-man crew, to a 3-man crew in LAMPs. All the students there are pretty much, I'm a student now too, but they were all my students in SAR school. So I reconnected with phenomenal guys like Joseph Sutherland, John Bradshaw, just amazing people. And I ended up in HSL 48, a great squadron that just had, they were a great squadron that, we had a tendency to, again, drift over the gray line when it came to certain things.
Yeah.
But, at HSL 48, phenomenal squadron and phenomenal pilots. One of my pilots was a guy named Eric Cranford, who perished in the Pentagon, 9/11.
Wow.
Yeah. And I did three deployments there. So the first deployment was to the Persian Gulf. The second deployment was a ball tops, which, for anybody in the Navy, it's kind of like winning the lottery to get on a ball tops.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't have no idea what it is, so I'm intrigued.
Okay, so it's a deployment to Europe, the northwestern portion of Europe, and you generally hit six places in 6 weeks.
Oh,
and
wow.
We hit England, Germany, Denmark, Poland, and Sweden in 6 weeks.
Nice.
Yeah, it was I don't think my liver has ever been more happy for a cruise to end than that particular cruise.
Nice. I like that.
Yeah, it was a goodwill drinking cruise, and it was a phenomenal time. I had a guy named Scott Shires and Jerry Day were on my sister ship, very good friends. So I spent a good chunk of time with them. And then my last cruise there, I came back from that cruise, and normally it was about a year between cruises. But I came back from that cruise. Another air crewman had some personal issues, so he had to drop off of his cruise, and they asked me if I would take this one, it was a shorty. It was a 2.5 month counter narcotics cruise. So I was back for 2 months and then left for the counter narcotics cruise, which was absolutely phenomenal. And we got to work with a lot of Coast Guard guys. We had the lead dead on board, and in that short cruise, it was we caught the Christmas rush of cocaine for 1999.
So,
and
this is
we
where
were just playing it.
Yeah, you actually, again, you and I talked about this already, but you got deployed to the water on this one too, kind of for recovery.
Yes. Well, multiple times on this particular one.
Oh,
So,
excellent.
So just to give you a little background on this particular cruise, one of the things that's really funny was prior to the cruise, the ship's crew had heard that there would be an NCIS agent placed into this crew because of the mission they were doing, but they wouldn't know who it was. So that other air crewman fell out just prior to the cruise, and then suddenly I'm there and they don't know me. So the whole ship thinks I'm the NCIS agent.
Oh, my gosh.
Which is really hilarious. So things like waiting in line for food didn't happen. People just get out of my way. And the other thing that had happened on that particular ship was just prior to cruising, they had failed all their inspections. So while they're on this deployment, they're doing all their preps because they're going to have to redo inspections as soon as they get back to pass them for readiness. So the ship's captain saw me PTing one day, and he calls me up to his stateroom and he's like, hey, look, I want you to run our ship's PT program. And I'm like, no problem, sir. I said, the only thing is, my program, I run it my way. And if you're okay with that, cool. He's like, no, I want you to beat them all down. I'm like, no problem. So,
this after coming from A school. Yeah. Okay. No problem.
Yeah. SAR school, buds. And now, I've got this group of people and I've been given, unfettered permission to just slay these guys. And so the first time I'm doing it, we're on the flight deck for about 45 minutes. And there's this huge guy in the back and he is just sweating pools and, he's not putting forth hardly any effort. And I am just hammering him. I'm like, hey, fat ass, get up. I'm all over him. Turns out he was the number 3 ranking officer on the ship. He was the Chang, chief engineer. But I didn't know. Never heard anything about it. But it was definitely an interesting evolution on that particular piece. So because we had done those things, the skipper, they're like running crazy drills on the boat. And me and my other crewmen, we're out on the flight deck in our UDTs with lawn chairs and sunning when we're not flying. So we're watching guys pour out of the back of the ship in their full-blown firefighting clothing, dripping sweat. Skipper's coming out, screaming and yelling at him. And then he'd be like, Petty Officer Smith, how's it going? I'm like, great, sir, just looking for cocaine. He's like, you keep up the good work. And so.
Oh, that's great.
So about 3 weeks into the cruise, we just got done flying a functional check flight. And I land and I walk to the corner of the flight deck and I look out in the ocean. We kind of got some ups and downs. And I'm like, I saw the maintenance chief. I was like, hey, chief, come here. I'm like, doesn't that look like a bale? He's like, I don't know what that looks like, but it looks like that. And he pointed at another one. And then I kind of like zoomed out with my eyes. And what had happened was we had driven the ship into one of the places where the narco guys had conducted an airdrop. Oh. And I think on that one, we probably got about 18 to 20 bales of cocaine. We called the bridge.
Gosh.
Yeah. Yes. We're not even in the air. No go fast. Nothing. I saw it from the edge of the flight deck.
Wow.
And we I want to say 18 to 20 bales on that particular one. And then we hit the rush, and it was absolutely crazy because we ended up getting 8 go fast boats end game on them in a 6-week period.
Wow.
Like, at one point in time, we're chasing one boat and you see another one going another way. And, I'm sitting back on the ship. I'm not flying now. My other crewman's out. I get a call. They're like, hey, aircraft's coming back. Put your swimmer stuff on. One of the boats just dumped all this cocaine over the side. We're going to go get it. So this is getting to what I had alluded to earlier. And we're on our way to go get it. And I can remember sitting in the door and we're all looking for it. They're like, we're getting close. I'm like, okay. It's one of those moments where you can see the shadow of the aircraft on the water.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden I see, the biggest shark I'd ever seen in my life. I'm like, look at the size of that shark. And the shark's outline looks about the same size as the shadow of the aircraft on the water. And I'm like, man, that's a big shark. Maybe a minute or two later, we're like, there's a cocaine. Let's go. Poof, into the water. That's second time I realize I'm in the food chain and way at the bottom. But I had totally forgotten about the shark until I'm stuffing like the 3rd bale of cocaine into this bag. And all of a sudden I'm like, hey, wait a minute. I'm right in the area where all that was. So in the end, we had gotten 54 bales of cocaine out of that.
Holy smoke.
Gave me a piece of paper saying I couldn't even have a drug test for 6 months because of the exposure to being in the water with it and handling the bales. So that cocaine was later used. We transferred it to another ship because President Clinton used it as a backdrop to one of his speeches on the war on drugs.
Oh, wow.
Now,
cool.
when we get ready to take it over to the other ship, you know, me having a sense of humor, and I've got friends on the other ship, I go down into the galley and I'm like, hey, give me a bag full of flour. So they do. And,
I know right where this is going.
Yeah. We've got all the cocaine loaded in the aircraft. And right before we land, I take a big scoop and I just go poof. So I've got white all over my face, down the front of my flight gear, all over my uniform. We land, they put chocks and chains on, and I come out with, you know, bale in each arm, and I go running into the hangar. I'm like, where do you guys want this? And like everybody in the hangar is like, but nobody said a single word to me. Not a single word. Not take that guy, get him drugged. Nothing. Not a single word. And my good friend, he's sleeping.
That's great.
He's sleeping. A guy named Tim Bray. He's sound asleep, and I find out where his rack is. I go down there. I'm like, hey man, how's it going? And he swears to this day that I got into the coke, but I didn't. So that was,
that's hilarious.
and then probably one of the craziest ones we had on that one, and I still kind of regret not doing it to this day, but we pushed. We followed a boat, and while we're doing it, we're like 90 miles from the ship. You know, we're way far away from the ship. We've got to be altitude. You can catch them on the radio. And as we're approaching their territorial waters, you know, we're like, you know, do we have clearance to you know, pursue? Because we're busting that line. And they're like, absolutely. You know, so then we come down to pursue. Now, when we were going down to pursue them back then, our SOP for the squadron and the wing was you could not go below 50 feet. And one of the things that allowed us to get end game on 8 go fasts was we were going way below 50 feet. And basically what we were doing was we were coming down so low, and we'd kick off to the side of the go fast and basically use our rotor wash to blow the water back in to the boat. Eventually you get enough water into the boat that it overrides the pump's ability to pump it out, and the boats become slower.
Oh, wow.
On this particular one, we weren't able to get it. You know, this boat's just hauling butt, and we're trying to stop it before it makes land. It goes over a coral reef, takes the motor out, and it's 100 yards off from the coast.
Took the motor out?
The guys get out. The motor came off the back of the boat.
Wow.
As it hit the coral reef. And the guys jump out, they swim to shore, and you just see them disappear into the woods. Then you start like seeing groups of people coming out. You know, it was like indigenous people, but you know, I know it wasn't. There must have been a small town right there, but they're coming out to see what's going on. And you know, we're hovering over this boat, and I'm like, I see a briefcase in the boat. And I'm like begging my pilot. I'm like, please let me lower my junior crewman. I cruised on that one with a guy named Ken Simon, phenomenal guy. And we just wanted to get that case to see what was in it.
Yeah.
And, you know, the pilot's like, no, might be dangerous. I'm like, let me get the case. He's like, no. So we don't get the case. So we get back to the boat. And the only Coast Guard guy's name that I remember from that was a guy named Phil Arredondo. So Phil Arredondo, he looked at us and he was like, look, I will guarantee you 100% that case was full of money. He said that's the same type of case. I guess at that point in time, they were finding a lot of these on boats that they had interdicted before they could get rid of things.
Yep.
And he was, yep, that case was full of money. So I blew my first opportunity at an early retirement right there because pilot wouldn't let us get it.
Oh man.
Yeah. So that was pretty much the end of that particular tour.
Wow.
All right. So post my time at HSL 51, I ended up getting a squadron called HSL 46, the Grandmasters. So one of the bennies to going to Japan is and being forward deployed naval forces is you get to work with the detailer a lot. And because you took that hard job to fill, the detailer really accommodates you when it comes to helping the people that you have get orders, and also helping you get the people that you want later. So I'm going to go ahead and say when I got to HSL 46 and just prior, I started assembling what I'll go ahead and call a dream team.
Nice.
And, you know, this is not to take anything away from anybody in any other squadron, but like I had the pick of the litter of the whole wing, and I got them all. And, you know, I had guys like Travis Seek, Spencer Waite, Brad, Chase Matthews. I mean, these first classes that I had were absolutely phenomenal. And I could not have been more blessed with the people that I had there at HSL 46. And when I checked into the command, we had a CO named Carl Bush. And also at 46, I worked with a XO first and then became CO, Chuck Litchfield. And, you know, when you talk about, you know, phenomenal leadership, both those men, you know, made it clear to everybody what the mission was, what the expectations were, and they were good, fair, decent people to work with.
Awesome. That's always good to hear.
Oh, it was great. So I checked in there, and immediately, you know, my SAR background, you know, a lot of commands will just do the basic, you know, hey, we're doing breaks, holds, and releases. You just kind of lay your arms up like that. And I remember our first time to the pool. I think I about had 3 swimmers DOR when I grabbed them and did not let go. And, you know, after I grabbed the first guy, I could see the nervous looks around the pool from other people. They're like, what's going on? I'm like, look, you know, we're not here to practice training. We're here to train for the real thing. And if somebody's going to fight you, you're going to learn how to fight them off of you. And so we kind of changed training to a much more serious tone.
Nice. When
it came to that. And it put us in a good light. August 30th of that year, we were sitting at work. I think somebody had the TV up, and, you know, we knew about Hurricane Katrina had hit.
Oh yeah, here it comes. Here it comes.
from a Navy standpoint, it had never been anything we'd done. It wasn't a mission we trained for. It wasn't anything. But at 16:30, I got called into the CO's office, and the CO said, "Look, we're deploying tomorrow morning. We're going to go to Pensacola, set up a forward operating base, and then we're going to go do whatever it is we can do." So, being a LAMP squadron, which, you know, it's traditionally a 3-man crew, and a lot of ASW gear in there, and also a RAS to help you land on the deck in high seas. The back of our aircraft is pretty full. Immediately, and I want to go ahead and give kudos now, just so I don't forget later. Yep. The maintenance crews started stripping everything out of that aircraft that didn't have to be in there for us to conduct a rescue. Those guys worked tirelessly, and we didn't even leave seats in the back for us to sit in.
Wow.
But all of it came out, everything. If it wasn't SAR gear, it was out. We did everything to save weight. We removed everything. And, you know, those guys are really, you know, when you're the SAR guy or you're the air crew, it's easy for people to turn around and give you accolades for, you know, the mission you accomplished. But I think a lot of times, you know, the people who make that mission possible, you know, the maintenance people, they really get left out, you know. So I would just like to go ahead and highlight them right there.
Awesome.
Our wing directed our wing. So we had HSL 40, which was the RAG, 42, 46, 44, and 48. And then HSL 60. They directed all the squadrons to see how many aircraft they could send. And I think in the end, it was somewhere around 8 to 10 aircraft we sent. But we were at work until midnight that night, and we had to be back in the morning at 4:30 because we started our flight brief at 5 in the morning. So
awesome.
That's pretty much, that is the preamble to us actually deploying there.
And once you got there, this is what I have. So I'm going to read it. And then I can't wait to hear about some of the rescues that you had out of there, which is funny.
All right.
Because, like we've had guys on here that have talked about Hurricane Katrina and the stuff that they had gone through, which is just mind blowing to me. Again, I was not there. But the guys that were there, and yourself included, I mean, you guys were doing some work. So the Navy, you earned yourself the Navy and Marine Corps medal out of this. And let's do this. Let me read it. Chief of Naval Operations, the President of the United States takes pleasure in presenting the Navy and Marine Corps Medal to Chief Aviation Warfare Systems Operator, Kenneth L. Smith, United States Navy, for service set forth in the following citation: for heroism while serving as rescue swimmer attached to the Helicopter Anti-Submarine Squadron Light 46 in support of Joint Task Force Katrina on 3 September 2005. During an extremely dramatic and exhausting search and rescue mission over Louisiana, Chief Smith displayed bravery and selflessness with tremendous jeopardy of his own life safety by exposing himself to dangerous flying debris, toxic flood water, and myriad obstacles and hazards on the ground, rescuing numerous civilians from the ravaged city of New Orleans. After rescuing 6 survivors, including an infant and a non-ambulatory elderly man, he located additional personnel stranded in a flooded residence. To effect their recovery, he was lowered on the hoist through a web of power lines and fallen trees, perilously swinging over sharp wooden fence posts protruding through the floodwaters of the victim's home. As Chief Smith was hoisted to the aircraft carrying each survivor, he used his body to shield them from the inherent danger of flying debris. While conducting a subsequent rescue, he waded through the chest-deep toxic water and ascended a home's flight of stairs to prepare a family for recovery, securing an infant to a raft bag. He immediately hoisted the victims one by one directly from the doorway to prevent them from exposure to the contaminated floodwaters. Chief Smith's actions during an over 10-hour mission resulted in the heroic rescue of 44 hurricane victims. By his courageous and prompt actions in the face of great personal risk, Chief Smith undoubtedly prevented the loss of more than 44 lives, hereby reflecting great credit upon himself and upholding the highest traditions of the United States Naval Forces. I love it. Ken, man, like I said, I know Katrina was off the hook, a Super Bowl of SAR. The Navy coming in now, again, like I know the difference between as far as what you guys do as far as Navy and Coast Guard does, but you know what, it was one fight, one team, one fight in that one. So give us a rundown, man. What did you deal with?
Okay. So if I can go ahead and set one thing, early on, our crews did not train to operate in an urban environment. So that's one of the things that, to me really jumps out. During my time as a SAR evaluator, I got trained in the quick strop, and the Navy started adjusting over to the Coast Guard gear. So that was a very big point. Everybody had the harnesses, everybody had the gear, but not everybody was trained in utilizing the quick strop and the procedures. So
interesting. I did not know that.
No, the Navy kind of piecemealed it together. If your squadron wanted to be trained, it meant a lot more work, a lot more stuff. SAR jumps was going to take longer. So some squadrons bought in and others didn't. But with my background and, having gone to the Advanced Rescue Swimmer School in Astoria while I was at 40, I realized instantly how critical this was going to be. So that morning we launched from Jacksonville and we arrived at Pensacola. So we got to Pensacola probably about 9:30 with all the helicopters. Maintenance people were going to be coming later, but I looked at Commander Fox, who was the XO for HSL 44. He was overall in charge of us. He was going to be the senior officer there for our wing. And I was the senior naval air crewman there for our wing at that point in time. So pretty much. I was his partner in crime for that element, if you will. As soon as we landed, I said, Commander Fox, what do we need? Because like I'm not wanting to hang out here in Pensacola. I'm wanting to take fuel and let's go. And he said, well, the first thing we need is an operations chief. I said, okay, no problem. I'm walking up toward HC-16 hangar because I'd been in Pensacola. I knew that there'd be people there. And I walk right up to a guy that I knew named Rob Carter. He was a rescue swimmer instructor years ago. I knew him, and I'm like, Rob, I need a place to set up an operations for our squadron. He took me right to a room. I mean, I literally had a space for us inside of 15 minutes. And I looked at all the air crew, and as soon as we landed, I'm like, do turnarounds on the aircraft. We're not hanging out here long. So we get our operation set up. You know, we'd probably been there 15, 20 minutes. And I look at Commander Fox, and I never knew him before, but, you know, I'm going to go ahead and say he's a phenomenal officer. When you see people make leadership decisions because it's right, not because it's necessarily personally right, you have to respect the hell out of that. And I looked at him, I'm like, Commander Fox, what are we doing? And he looked at me, he's like, Chief, we're waiting for orders. I'm like, okay. And, you know, you've got CNN playing on the TV in the corner. I wait about 10 minutes and I'm like, Commander Fox, what are we doing? And I could already see he's getting tired of me. He's like, waiting on orders, Chief. And I pointed at the TV where CNN was playing. And I said, there's your orders, sir. And he looked at me and he said, you know what, Chief, you're right. Tell him to go load up the aircraft. We're leaving.
Yes.
And that's exactly what we did. So we were probably on the ground maybe an hour in Pensacola, where we've set up, done turnarounds on the aircraft, filled the aircraft with water. And our first missions coming out of there, you know, it wasn't the sexy mission we were looking for, but you could see on the news, you could see that the biggest issue they really had going, even over rescues at that time, was getting relief supplies to the dome. So we loaded up the aircraft and we start flying to New Orleans. Now, what I'd like to highlight out of this is, as far as naval assets go, unless there were naval assets that were organic to that area, Lamps East Coast, we were the first people flying in there. All the other naval assets that were coming in would come in a day later. So we were moving before a support system really existed. There was no AWACS in the air. There was no aircraft controlling authority. So when you flew in there, and unlike normal aviation air, where you've got people controlling aircraft and who's going, there was nothing. Right. So we get close to the dome and you start trying to head in, and literally if you had 100 feet in between you and the aircraft in front of you, another helicopter would swoop in and get in between. So you really had to pick your interval correctly, because I can remember at one point in time looking out the cargo door and looking around us, and there were aircraft at varying altitudes at every clock position around you, going different directions, doing different things. And no controlling authority. And obviously, because the Coast Guard had a unit there, you know, I saw their aircraft a couple times that day too. But I think there was probably quite a few National Guard helicopters that were there right out the gate because they were prepared ahead of time. But getting in there, so, you know, we get in there, I'm like, okay, we're going to drop off our supplies. We'd already been flying over thousands of people needing to be rescued. We're like marking everything in our computer where everybody is, you know, and I'm like, okay, let's drop this stuff off. Let's go get rescues. We land. They're like, hey, we need you to fly over here, pick up these people and bring them here. We stuck like most of the helicopters that came there. We got stuck in this loop of either getting more supplies or picking up people and bringing them to the dome. So when I talk about rescues, and I know a lot of guys have different numbers than me, the only numbers that I use when I talk about rescues, I mean, we did a lot of what I'll call medevacs. I won't call them rescues because There was no hoist operation or anything like that. We probably moved 100 people that day and at least 10 aircrafts full of water and food back and forth to the dome.
Wow.
Now, Commander Fox had put out to us all, he wanted everybody to meet at the airport there in New Orleans in between 18 and 1900, and we would meet up and then we would all fly back together to Pensacola. So that was the plan for the day. And, we're getting into the airport probably about 18:15. And it's dark as we're coming in. And we get in and we land, and Commander Fox's aircraft is right next to ours. And, I'm like, I don't want to be here. I want to go get rescues. Let's go get rescues. And we've got all these people marked. And I'm like, Commander Fox, how do we get fuel? And he looked at me and he said the wrong thing you can say to me. He's like, Chief, the aggressive guy gets the fuel first. I'm like, Roger that. But what he had also said in that is they'd had people there waiting for over 2 hours waiting for fuel already. They're just hanging out waiting to get fuel. And I'm like, okay, so, my pilot walks off with Commander Fox, and I take my Surefire flashlight out and I see the fuel truck and I spotlight the fuel truck driver. I keep my light in his eyes until he pulls right up to me. I literally have our aircraft topped off and fuel in 15 minutes.
Wow.
And
well played, sir.
You're like, done. Yeah, everything's done. I go walking back over there. And I'm like, I look at my pilot, which was a Lieutenant Palermo, phenomenal pilot. I'm going to go ahead and say, I owe him my life. Almost all of my flights at Katrina were with him, and over half of them at Rita later were with him. You cannot beat him as a pilot. My hoist operator that day was a guy named Travis Seek, who is one of my dearest, longest, best friends. And I trusted him to be on the hoist, which says a lot because I was senior to him, but I knew I had more SAR experience. So I looked at my pilot. I'm like, come on, let's go. And, Skipper Fox is looking at me like, what do you mean? I'm like, sir, we've already got fuel. Can we go get rescues? and he looks at me and he's like, as long as you're back in Pensacola by 2300. I'm like, Roger that. Palermo looking at me like, how in the heck did you do that? I'm like, I'd have siphoned gas out of other people's helicopters if I had to at that point in time. So we had one position marked that wasn't too far from the dome. That was a building that looked like it had probably 33 people on top of it. As my memory serves, it was either a 3 or 5 story building. Water had covered the first story of the building.
Yeah.
So we get into position. We get over there, get over the position, and I start getting lowered down. Now, this was one of those times where I guess maybe the lighting was off or whatever, because the hoist operator and I both kind of read the distance wrong. And it was, it was a real John Belushi moment because, I hit that roof hard, fast, and tucked and rolled. So he lowers me down to the roof, and I impact pretty hard, tucked and rolled, pop back up like John Belushi in Animal House. And then I'm looking at this large crowd of people. And I was like, who's in charge? And an elderly man came up to me and I was like, look, I don't want to separate families. So organize your people, elderly and children, and then families. So we could make sure that when we were picking, because we knew we could only put so many people in the aircraft, that we were picking people out in a manner that was going to allow us.
Yeah.
Now, when you take a look at our LAMPS aircraft, traditionally, you would have 2 seats in the back. We had been utilizing cases of water for just me and my crewman to sit on it. Everything else had been pulled out of the aircraft.
Right.
So we started with 4 guys in the aircraft. So he starts giving me people, start raising them. I think I've got about 7 people into the aircraft. And at this point in time, I get approached by what I'll go ahead and call two gangbangers. And this was kind of a real touch and go moment, because they're like, hey, we're next. And I'm like, no, you're not. And the guy pulls up his shirt and he shows me a gun and he's like, we're next. And I'm like, no, you're not. And this, there was a moment where I felt inside pretty helpless, but I knew I couldn't say anything to them. And, so I just looked at the guy. I'm like, look, man, you can make me put you on the hoist. I said, but if I do, they're going to go up to about 1,000 feet and they're going to cut it and you're going to fall to your death. And, that, thank the Lord, they at very least believed my bluff, and they turned around and they walked off, and I didn't see those two guys again.
Wow.
We continued to hoist people up and hoist people up and hoist people up. And in the end, I can remember, I'm like, I'd hoist another guy up and I'm looking at my crewman. He's like, one more. And I'm like, okay, send him another. And I look at Travis and he's like, one more. And I'm like, how many people are in this? At that point, I had lost track of how many people we had put in the aircraft. Then we finally, he's like, one more. And he points and he's like, and you.
Yeah.
So
okay.
I hook up with the last guy. We get up. And when I get into the aircraft, I pull myself forward and he shuts the door behind me. And I am stuck in a semi-standing position because there's nowhere for me to go. He has literally sat people all the way up in the tunnel and throughout the aircraft, sit one person down, sit the next person in their lap, sit the next person in their lap. So we get to the aircraft. We had put 13 people, not including the 4 air crew. We had 17 people in a Bravo.
Wow.
And when we got to the airport, it looked like a clown car. They just kept coming out and coming out. I'm like, holy cow.
Holy
So day one, those were our first rescues on day one. We flew back to Pensacola, and this is kind of funny. So Pensacola had some really interesting nightlife, what I'll call it. And there's a very famous or notorious place called Sammy's. It was a strip club.
Oh, so nice.
I grab all the swimmers that were there that night. We go out, and it was not a wild party because everybody was, from briefing at 5 o'clock that morning to being there at, midnight. Everybody was totally drained. And I can remember looking at one of my guys and he's sitting up at the stage, but he's passed out. He's just sound asleep.
At the stage of the strip club.
He had maybe one beer and he was out cold.
That's hilarious.
So it was not a wild night for us to say.
That's funny.
So what we ended up doing following day one was we realized that this was a rapidly changing and evolving environment. We had more air crews than aircraft. On day two, what ended up happening was a lot of other different types of aircraft came into Pensacola, along with a Navy admiral.
Yeah.
So we ended up getting West Coast squadrons came in with us. There was a guy named Randy Schwartz was the senior air crewman, and Bobby Deaton. So we arranged at that point in time, what we would do is we would leave one East Coast leadership with one West Coast leadership, and we would alternate days. And, pretty much you had an on-fly day, an ops day, and then an on-fly day. So it was every other day was really your day in the fire.
Yeah.
And that allowed us to be able to start putting, some good leadership into it. At the end of day one, we wrote down everybody's lessons learned. When crews came in to leave the next morning, they were all reading what people did and what worked.
Oh, that's smart. Super smart.
Yeah, because everything was changing fast.
Yeah.
By like day 3, we've got aircraft getting shot at. We were borrowing chainsaws from fire departments so we could get in through roofs because they were getting phone calls from people that were stuck in the roofs that couldn't get out.
Yeah.
But one of the big things that came out of us doing the alternating thing was us really being able to capture the lessons learned. On day 2, anybody who wasn't trained in direct deployment went to the pool and got trained in direct deployment. We spoke to the West Coast. We're like, hey, look, we need to be able to do this. We don't have the time or the mechanism to get everybody trained and do the practice in the aircraft. Can we do this? And they gave us their Omni Domni. And they're like, yeah, but afterward, they got to go back and do the regular training. I'm like,
that's
okay,
so funny. You know, you got to get trained. And you're like, I just saved 15 people. What do you mean I got to go get trained? I thought that was my training. I should be checked off right now.
Exactly. I should be teaching you.
Yeah.
So, you know, one of the interesting pieces out of that was, you know, with getting all the guys trained, it was greatly reducing the amount of time that it took to do a recovery.
Yeah.
As you know, the quick shot, I mean, it's fast.
Oh, it's great. Oh, I love it.
A lot of the rescues that were being done out of these tall apartment buildings that were made of brick with just like a metal balcony. So they were like bouncing from one balcony to the next balcony to the next balcony and making all that happen that way. I want to give kudos to a guy named Matt Haydu. I think it was day 2 that he went out. It might have been day 1, but he was the first guy that really ran into the problem of what are we going to do when we have babies? And Matt Haydu was the guy that, at least in my mind, came up with the whole baby bag evolution. What he did was they dumped out the raft bag, and what they would do was when they got a baby, they would place the baby in the raft bag. They would zip up the raft bag, leave a little hole so oxygen still goes through, and we would connect that with a small hook on the rescue hook. Okay. Then when the swimmer would go up, he would hold the baby in his arms while he was being hoisted. And if something happened and he was knocked out, the baby still wouldn't fall because it was still attached to the bag. I want to say there were probably 20 babies rescued that way from our air. So, you know, and I employed his technique 3 different times myself, which, you know, it worked great.
So the hook you're referring to, for those that don't know, especially some of the, like, I know which one you're talking about. There's 2 hooks. There's the main gated hook, and then there's known as the male hook on the back side. It's just a small utility ring hook. And so I know exactly what you're talking about with that. That's not intended like that, but that's pretty smart. Like, you have to adapt and overcome. And when you get into situations like that, something that, you know, a lot of guys don't know is that you guys with the Navy, the rescue basket was not part of your kit to show up. So if you don't have a rescue basket to put somebody in, a baby or a mother and a child, well, then you better have another alternative way. So the fact you guys are dumping a raft out, now using the bag, connecting to the hook as a safety aspect to, like, okay, now it's not going to fall no matter what. You have a backup. Man, well done. I like that.
Yeah. And, you know, I'm pretty sure somebody else would have drove to that. But Matt was the first person that came up with the experience, and, you know, he did great. And, you know, our doing the debriefs allowed so many other people to be able to do it because they had a solution to it before they encountered the problem.
Yeah. Very cool. There's like, so the hoist hooks now that I use, we don't have that option. And I love the hoist hook I use now. It's the LSC auto locking hook. Capewell makes the one with the slide lock. They have another auto locking, but it's one spot to go on that hook. You do not have multiple attachment points. You have the main holding, or the main gate itself. You drop in, you're in. So.
Right. Well, you know, and that probably, we could have worked that the same way. We would have just connected to the same big hook with the top of the raft bag. And, you know, I know that it'll more than hold 2 people. So a baby and a person, no problem whatsoever.
Yeah.
So that kind of gets through my second day. I was ops on the second day. So, you know, we trained people, we ran flight schedules, we made sure turnovers. An interesting thing that happened on the second day. So on the first day, I got 13 rescues, those were all at night. When we were flying back, we saw a guy that was trying to signal us with a flashlight. So it's like, okay, maybe we'll get one more on our way back. So we're somewhere over Mississippi. I get lowered, and, you know, I want to go ahead and highlight right now the skill of both the pilots and the crew chiefs in these aircrafts. If you had asked me before, were our pilots that skillful? I never had a measure. But, when you've got pilots hovering aircraft and crewmen guiding aircraft where literally their tail rotor is within 5 feet on either side of a tree or a building, and they're holding that hover so perfectly that you're getting dropped through a web of power lines that you easily could have reached your hand out to any side and touched. That skill level, it blew my mind. It was an amazing sight to see, because they were just phenomenal. So on that particular time, I get lowered down through this web. And it's hairy. Now, the lines aren't energized because there's no lights on. But could they come back on at any given time? Absolutely. I get lowered down. You don't
know. That's the kick, is you don't know. And you're going in between them right now. It's like, come on.
And I can't get to where the house is. So they lower me down in the middle of the street. And when they lower me down in the middle of the street, it's over my head. So I'm treading water, disconnecting. I swim over to this front porch. And I shit you not, I get there. I'm like, all right, man, come on. He's like, no, I don't want to go. Do you got any food and water? And I'm like, look, man, this isn't Domino's. I just risked my life to come down here to get you out. I'm like, yes, I've got food and water. It's in the helicopter. Come with me. He's like, no, I'm good. I said, and I looked at him. I'm like, look, man, I'm going to get in the helicopter. We're going to mark this area off as good. Nobody needs rescue. Now's your chance. He's like, no, I'm good. So I swim back out to the middle. I hook back up. And while I'm going up, through the power lines, I'm like, I am not doing this again at night. Absolutely not. This is too dicey. As I'm getting brought in the aircraft, my senior crewman's like, we're not doing this again at night. No way. So I'm sure there's more. I don't have more captured in my head, but at least from our air wing, I believe that those were the 13 that I previously got were the only conducted at night that we got. I could be wrong, but it was after that we came back. We're like, okay, guys, we're not doing night rescues. It's too dicey. We didn't have MVGs then, and the environment was too volatile.
Right. Well, NVGs are a major game changer too. So yeah, for sure.
They really are. So one of the other things, being in a leadership position in the beginning, there were so many people that needed to be rescued. And, I am a ginormous animal lover, but we had to tell guys, we're like, look, people, can't take animals. And that persisted till about day 3, no animals, because, if you got a choice between a puppy or a human being, you've got to pick a human being. So that was one of the big kickers. On to my day 3. So my day 3 was my big day, and that's the day that I ended up getting 44. My crew chief that day was a guy named Spencer Waite. Again, top-notch crew chief, top-notch hoist operator, top-notch rescue swimmer. I would like to highlight, when you take a look at all the swimmers that went there, East, West Coast, HSC, HSL, HS, it really doesn't matter. Any one of those swimmers could have been placed in any position and would have gotten phenomenal results. Like you said, it was a Super Bowl of rescue swimmers, but I like to say it was more like a lottery of rescue swimmers. We were available, and that's why we were there. The guys who got sent there, we weren't all sent because we were the best. Yeah. No, we were sent because we were available. Right. And what I'd like to say is it proved the process that we had was the best, because everybody went out and did phenomenal work. So some of my rescues on that day, one of the ones that really stands out to me, and they talk a little bit about it in the write-up, but a lot of times when you hear the write-up or how things turn into words, it gets a little choppy and it's a little bit hard to understand. So
that's why I do this podcast. Come on, let's go, Ken.
So we hit one house and we got it, and then we got the people up there, and the guy's like, "Hey, my mom is in this other house. Can we go there?" It's like a block away. So we've got the guy pointing out. He's guiding us. There's the house. So, like if you were to take a look at the front porch, about 8 feet from the front porch is a tall wooden picket fence with sharp things going all the way across the top.
Yeah.
There's a wire fence going down the length of the house, and then it comes across the back of the house too. So they had about maybe 4 feet. We were also dealing with power lines, but about 4 feet of space in which to hoist me down and then swing me onto the front porch. So they get me down, I'm like, level off that way,
Yeah.
He starts swinging, he gets it and lowers it, and, feet out, ass down, you slam onto the porch, grab a hold of whatever you can. So hopefully you don't fall back off. And I get there, and you've got your old, what I'll call probably 50s raggedy front porch door. It's fallen apart. It's metal. It's clearly not in the best repair of its life, but I'm banging on the screen door, bang, bang, bang. Nobody answers. Bang, bang, bang. Nobody answers. I jump on the radio. I'm like, "Hey, nobody's answering." He's like, "His mom is there, guarantees." I'm like, "Okay, let's try the back door." So swings me out. I bounce off the fence. Took a pretty good shot to my back. He hoists me up, takes me over to the top of the house, lowers me, and then transitions the aircraft while I walk across the top and come down the back onto the back porch. Bang, 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 bang. Nobody answers. I'm like, okay. And, I jump on the radio. I'm like, "Look, you got to get me more comps. Does the back connect to the front house?" And he's like, I'm talking to the guy. He says, "No." So I go around to the front, and, now I'm banging like a banshee, and she comes to the door, and there's probably like 4 or 5 people in the house. And taking a look at the angle, taking a look at the weight when I connect somebody to me, he couldn't even see me when I'm on the front porch. And the front porch is probably 10 feet up, but probably 5 feet over the water. So when it comes time to raise me, I'm like, "Hey man, when you hoist me fast." So I'm like, "Hit it." So starts hoisting, it's craning off the bottom of the thing. And then all of a sudden, once it gets enough to where our feet lift off the ground, we go across into the wooden fence. And, every single time I turn to use my back to cushion the survivor, but we took 4 people out of there like that.
Holy smoke.
It was, I'll tell you, they all kind of blend together. You get 44 in a day. It's a lot, plus, I'm not exactly a spring chicken, so the memory isn't always the best.
All good.
One of the other ones that stands out really good is we had these apartment complex surrounded by a wooden fence, narrow, kind of like a 20-foot courtyard in the middle. But our idea is there's a field next to it. Is they're going to put me down in the field, and then I'll be able to go into the complex. Because when we first flew over the complex, what we ended up seeing was all the shingles were coming off to the roof. And I can remember looking when I made it to the ground and I'm looking up, the shingles are coming off the roof, and I'm watching them wash through the rotor wash.
Holy smoke! Yeah,
just debris is coming down through it. And we had a lot of engines damaged through objects like that. But so the original plan is I'm going to get lowered with an axe. I'm going to cut my way through the fence and then make it into the courtyard, organize people, and then we'll start bringing people out. Well, my Spencer told me this story later, and it's kind of funny because I get down there with the axe and I'm swinging. He's like, "Oh, he's chopping with the axe," and he's like, he's getting slower. He's slowing down. finally to the end, I finally got enough pieces and I can get the axe inside and start prying out sections to where we could really open up a good thing.
Yeah.
But I think we pulled probably maybe 10 people out of that area that hadn't departed before. Now, day 3, I hadn't spoke to my wife since we left, so my wife and kids, they're glued to the TV the whole time. And, I was always kind of a gear guy and always kind of like to have nice stuff and, a little edgy. It's like the rules say you can have this, but I'm going to have this.
Nice.
So in that environment, rather than just having a visor, I liked wearing goggles. I had a pair of Oakley goggles, so they're pretty distinct. Not everybody's wearing them. And on day 3, I get lowered into the street. I think I sent you a couple pictures of this particular rescue, because I can remember while I'm in the street, I see a news helicopter and it starts flying around. And I'm pulling 3 people out of this particular area. I get 3 people out that we found in the street, and my wife is watching TV and she sees this. And, my wife only sees the back. And this is kind of funny because my wife's like, that's Kenny's ass. She identifies me through her flight suit. That's her husband's ass.
Oh, that's funny.
So,
well done, ma'am. Well done.
Yeah. I turn around, she sees the goggles and it's like crystal clear. That is my husband. There it is. She's like, Courtney, it's your dad. Come look. So, that was those rescues there. Another one that kind of still gets me, so toward the end of day 3, for us, the rescues had kind of tapered off. It wasn't like gangbusters toward the end. And I'm getting this guy, same thing, lower down in the water, swim over to his porch, walk up the stairs, and, the guy's got a box of puppies. And I'm like, well, I'm not at a point right now where we can't take them. I'm like, okay, I'm not choosing between people and animals at this point.
Yeah.
But the guy, I'm probably up to about my waist in water, and he goes to hand me the box, and the box just falls apart as he's like this. Puppies are all going in. I snatched up what I could, but I can tell you that still haunts me because I know I lost several. And I'm just like, ugh. I know a lot of people, we saw so many dead bodies in the water all over the place. My first rescue, the first night, while my crewman's looking at me over here rescuing people, he's looking at bodies floating right next to where we were at. They were just lower in the street. So that was one of the things that got, I didn't like. I think it was my day 5 because we were alternating days. I saw a Rottweiler on top of a roof. Now by day 5, it was very sparse getting rescues, and I'm like, let's see if we can get close. And we couldn't. The dog jumped off the roof and started swimming off, and it was like, okay, we're not helping him at this point.
Yeah.
But I told my wife, how much that kind of haunted me. So we get in and we do all the rescues. I will say this: we did have one crew that lost a person. And I won't give any names. I wasn't there. I don't know the exact circumstances. We talked about it afterward. I'll also caveat and say a lot of safety things that I've seen in my naval career. You end up with a rescue strap that doesn't only have one safety strap. Now it's got 2, or now it's got 3. Normally, it's not that the first one didn't work; it's that the first one wasn't used.
Right.
But the whole story doesn't come out, so we start creating things that will. How do I put
Fix
this?
something that doesn't need to be fixed.
Right. Yeah. You're fixing the problem that need to be fixed.
Right. The problem that needed to be fixed was the training itself to begin with, or the correction of the guy that made the mistake, owning it and being able to correct it himself. Yeah. I've run into that many times. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Now, I won't say without a doubt that this is that case.
Okay.
As I understand it, they were picking up a extremely large woman. They had the safety strap applied, and they weren't using the quick strap on her. For some reason, they were using the regular rescue strap and
Yep.
the safety strap. On that, just in case it's a little different from yours, when the safety strap is applied, the arms are down at the side, the safety strap goes around the arms and buckles underneath the strap in the front.
Agreed.
Okay. What apparently ended up happening is right as they got to the door, this woman decided she wanted to help and she raised her arms.
To grab the
Yeah.
aircraft to help pull herself
Yep.
in. Yeah.
She raised her arms. The crewman was also with her. So I think right at the same time that he went to reach to help pull in, she raised her arms and she just went straight through to the deck.
Oh, man.
They got a hold of the Coast Guard aircraft that was close that had a litter, and they littered her out. We did hear later that she didn't make it. Yeah, so it's I feel truly sorry for that crew because I know it's not anything that they would want. I feel truly sorry for that family. But unfortunately, it's not a zero-sum game event. It's not 100% safe.
Right. No, hey, what we do is dangerous, and you're hanging from a helicopter,
Yeah.
As much as we all love it, it comes with its own inherent dangers. So
Absolutely. So we ended up wrapping up that event, and everybody came back at different times, and toward the end it was it turned into really benign. A lot of flying around, very few people getting rescues. Some guys were still getting cats and dogs, the random rescue here and there. It tapered off. One of the things I would like to highlight is one of the things we encountered, if I can call it this, is rescue fever. You got called to the Super Bowl of rescues, and guys, and I'll go ahead and say myself included, you're wanting more. There never seems to be enough rescues. You want more. Oh, you got 15 yesterday? I did 18 years, never had a rescue.
Yeah.
15's not enough.
Yeah.
And it kind of really created that circle. I think had I been more mature as a leader at that time, I probably would have done what I could to squash it. But that little reflection back, I didn't do it 100%. The water. Let me talk about the water here for a second.
All right.
So day
well,
one,
actually, hold on. Let me back up
Yeah.
to that because that's actually a pretty good discussion, and I haven't had anybody actually talk about something like that where, it's I'm going to call it an addiction. Like, you get a good SAR case, you get that rescue, you're sucked in. Like, you want to do more. One of the things about that idea of getting that rescue is you get addicted to it. That's you get sucked in and you want to get more and you want another one. And I'm not looking for people to get hurt, but man, I get jonesing when the alarm goes off. I'm like, yeah, let's go do this. And
right.
I've been in the spot where I get really excited about going, and I don't have a problem admitting this now, but I was pumped. I'm like, yeah, let's go, let's do this. And I had two people be like, dude, calm down. And I'm like, but it's a case, let's go. And they're like, calm the fuck down. I'm like, all right. And I got put in check. And the worst part about that in particular incident for me was we didn't end up going. It got canceled. So I'm all Jones up for this case the rescue to go to, and it never even happened. Yeah. So I agree with you with that. That's something that has to be put in check for all of us that go out and do this, especially when it's one after the next. You have to keep yourself in check.
So I think our rescue fever, it wasn't that like exuberant excitement. It was just kind of like more like feeding an addiction. We had a lot of air crewmen that showed up without aircraft, and we didn't put them in play as early as we should have. And I think we could have definitely done that. But it was one of those things like, hey man, you didn't bring an aircraft. I'm not going to sit back for an extra day just so you can go play. Right. We probably should. Again, I'd like to say maintenance, maintenance. Those guys were phenomenal. How they kept our aircraft flying, I don't know. Because we abused the hell out of those, and I think half the aircraft, when we came back and they did inspections on the engines, half the engines had to be replaced.
Oh my gosh.
Because of debris through the engine that had taken out portions of the engine. So flying an aircraft to the edge of its capability, they definitely did that.
That's awesome. I don't know if it's awesome. Maybe that's a poor choice of words. Yeah. That's a bummer. That's a lot of money. Sorry, government.
Yeah. Now on the backside of that, so we came back, and then about 2 weeks later we get called out for Rita. But the Navy now for Rita is they're trying to do things big Navy wise, and honestly, they made a call that ended up being horrible. They decided they were going to put us on a gator boat, which is meant for Marines, and pull all the Navy on that. And then they'll just pull right off of New Orleans. But what that did was, when we did that cut our crew day, because not every helicopter pilot was current for night landings at sea. So while we could have stayed there as long as we wanted, not going to a boat actually reduced our crew day.
Interesting.
Which had a weird side effect. Rescues at Rita, there weren't nearly as many.
We're going to get into Rita in a second. Hold on. Don't jump the gun on me, because we got a little something I get to read on that one too. But you were actually mentioning one more thing about New Orleans in particular, and that was the water, like just going down in the water.
So day one, and this is probably everything coming out of the swamp. Day one, about 30 feet above the water, the smell would kick in, and you could smell it, and it was bad. By my day three, 600 feet above the water, you could smell the sewage, nasty swamp smell, 600 feet. Wow. And it was very intense. Myself and several others ended up at medical, treating rashes and things that we got as a result of it. For years, my wife coined it Katrina foot, because I had one foot that gave me problems following that, and I probably had rashes on that foot for a good 10 years.
Holy smoke.
Yeah. And it wasn't regular footage or whatever, not at all.
Jeez, oh man.
Now, I did forget, probably for me, what is the coolest thing, and this speaks to what an amazing wife I have. As we got to the backside of the operation, comms picked up. I was able to talk to my wife. I told her how the animals bugged me, not being able to get the animals. Spoke about the Rottweiler in particular that I couldn't get. We own Rottweilers and had in the past. And, my wife, when I got home, I was spent, I was tired, I was exhausted, like everybody else that went, but, there's a mental toll that comes with getting in that zone and staying there for such an extended period of time. And, I'd probably hit my mark at that point. When I walked through the door, I'm probably going to get emotional on this. My wife's like, "Hey, you need to go in your office." And I went in the office, and in the office was a Rottweiler puppy that she had got.
Come on, go. Nah, nice job.
Yeah, and the Rottweiler's puppy her name was Katrina.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
What a nice touch.
Can't beat it. So, that speaks to what an amazing wife I have, that she read me and knew exactly what I needed right then and there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well played, ma'am. Good job.
Yeah, absolutely. One last thing.
Yeah, one more thing for Katrina. Hit me. What you got?
So if you watch the news, you would believe that FEMA wasn't anywhere. I'm here to tell you, FEMA was everywhere. I realize if you're having the worst day of your life and you're sitting in your house at least everywhere in New Orleans. Let me say that. You're having the worst day of your life. Maybe FEMA didn't come and knock on your door and be like, I'm FEMA, I'm here to help you. I realized that they didn't get to everybody. But what I will tell you is I saw FEMA everywhere. And maybe if those people had opened their front door and looked left or looked right, they would have seen FEMA, because their output was absolutely amazing and stunning. And I don't think I've ever seen any organization respond to that level like I did there. Absolutely amazing.
Wow.
Nice. And I know that's contrary, when you get into politics, to the spin that was placed on what happened there. As a matter of fact, I've got several other things I want to go back to on Katrina on that. But, the second piece for me was, if you weren't happy with FEMA, maybe you should have hired the people that were running the ABC liquor stores. And I don't mean to say something totally unpopular, but I'm going to go ahead and say that 75% of the adults that we rescued were underneath the influence of some drug or alcohol. Not that we gave them piss tests or anything, but their behavior was so erratic that, it struck me as falling into those categories. We found weapons in aircraft. We found needles, drugs. When you pile all the people out, just the stuff that's left laying around, a lot of those things were there. So if anybody listens to this, moving into the future, hey, leave when they ask you to leave if you can, because it can make the difference between life and death. And maybe not just yours, maybe the life and death of somebody who's coming to have to rescue you, because you wouldn't leave when you were given wise advice to leave.
Right. Yeah.
Now, you had mentioned the Navy Marine Corps medal. I would like to bring that up for a second, only because I feel, first off, it's weird to me that the Navy Marine Corps medal is above a Bronze Star. I equate a Bronze Star to a combat award, and I think most people that have this medal probably feel this way, but it makes me quite uncomfortable. It makes me uncomfortable because, quite honestly, I think every rescue swimmer I know would have taken leave to go be at Katrina. We weren't sent into war with the thought that we're going to die. Now, every rescue swimmer that I knew there, regardless of branch and what they did amazing things, and we weren't trained for that environment. It just speaks to the professionalism and the other training that we had. We made it work in that environment, so that's a big piece. But, two other rescues I would like to cover, and I think these are rescues that really highlight the So Others May Live. Very good. One was conducted by a guy named Chase Matthews. Chase Matthews had conducted a rescue at one house. And if I get any of these pieces wrong, Chase, I apologize. I'm just saying it as I remember it to the best.
We're just going to have to get Chase on here to back these words up. Come on, Ken.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Chase, you being called out.
But Chase somehow found out that there were people in this house. And the water was above the threshold of the door. Chase swims into the house.
Oh.
And when he gets to a back room in this house, there's a lady, and it's either a male or female, I can't remember which, but this person is paralyzed. They don't have use of their legs. Chase is in this house. He's trying to figure out what he's going to do. And he grabs an ironing board and makes a backboard out of this ironing board. He pulls down the stairs to the attic, the rickety stairs that they have in all the old houses where you flip the thing down. And he drags this person into the attic with the other person. He then kicks out one of the eaves that allows airflow into the top, drags the person out onto the roof, then places the person into a litter, and they hoist that person up.
Holy smoke. What?
I don't think Chase Matthews ever weighed more than $150. I could be wrong. I haven't seen him in a lot of years, but the mere fact that he was able to do, the improvising, not giving up, doing incredible, tremendous feats, to me, just blows me away.
That's awesome.
You know, I'm proud to get to serve with guys like that. The other one that stands out, and I know absolutely every person I had there has an amazing story. From our wing, we had 4 Navy Marine Corps medals. I was one of the people who got one. But I'm going to go ahead and tell you, probably every swimmer we had was deserving. Maybe the writing ability of the people who wrote their awards didn't convey it as well. There was nobody who did anything more. But one of the ones that really stood out to me was there was a Chief, Jim Swanson from 44. Jim ended up being at one of those old folks' homes where people were left behind. He found it, and he was having to go down these outward spiraling stairs, you know, like the ones that take you to the outside,
Yeah.
to send up a brick building. And he was taking ladies on his back one by one to the roof. When he got up to the roof to do the hoisting, you know, that like rubber coating that they spray on the top of a lot of the roofs?
Yeah.
Well, there must have been a big rip in one side, because why the helicopter, and he was getting ready to hoist the guy, why the helicopter moved over the roof, he's in the center of this holding on to a lady, and the air goes underneath and the whole roof balloons up while he's standing on top of it.
Holy cow. What?
Yeah, almost throwing them off the building when that happened. He has the wherewithal to draw his SAR knife, and he cut a hole in it rapidly, and they descended back down onto the roof until he could turn around and get that out. But that was, you know, to me, I'm like, whew, that's a real dicey one right there.
All right. We need that guy on here too. What's his name?
Jim Swanson.
Jim Swanson. Let's go, Jim. We need this story too. Let's go. Holy cow.
So that's pretty much it for what I got for Katrina.
Well, Katrina was amazing for you. Well done to you and your crews. You know, and to make this even cooler is 2 weeks later. Yeah, like 24 September 2005. You guys get launched out to Rita, and here it is. You earned yourself an air medal there, and I get to read this one too, which is great. So, Commander, 2nd Fleet, the President of the United States takes pleasure in presenting the Air Medal with Bronze Star for first award to Aviation Warfare Systems Operator Chief Kenneth Smith, United States Navy, for service set forth in the following citation: for meritorious achievement in aerial flight as air crewman of an SH-60 Bravo helicopter while attached to Helicopter Anti-Submarine Squadron Light 4-6 during joint search and rescue operations for Hurricane Rita victims on 24 September 2005. Chief Smith skillfully assessed in directing his aircraft using his portable global positioning system at low altitude through perilous turbulence and periods of heavy rain with malfunctioning stabilization augmentation systems while searching for storm victims in the southeastern Louisiana. Launching from Naval Air Station New Orleans to search area with no available assistance from aircraft control agencies or information about fuel on station. He expertly cleared the pilot to avoid numerous power lines, guide wires, and damaged buildings. Spotting civilians in distress near Fort Island, he directed a confined landing to a small patch of grass between trees and power lines in wind gusts up to 65 knots. Disembarking the aircraft, he learned of a family stranded in their home by the floodwaters. Departing over power lines, he proceeded to the residence where another confined landing was required to rescue the family of 3. After embarking the survivors with the aircraft light on the wheels over the wet ground, he evacuated them to safety of the original landing zone, reuniting them with their relatives. Chief Smith's overall contribution to Joint Task Force Rita included 14 hours of flight, 3 rescues, and 100 pounds of cargo delivered. By his skillful airmanship, steadfast aggressiveness, and exemplary devotion to duty, in face of hazardous flying condition, Chief Smith reflected great credit upon himself and upheld the highest traditions of the United States Naval Service. God, I love these write-ups. Come on, let's go, Ken.
It's a long run-on sentence, isn't it?
It totally is. But you know what? It's awesome because it gives a little highlight of what everything goes on, and man, that is awesome. So literally, Katrina's over, everybody's done. You debrief, and boom, 2 weeks later, launched out for Rita. Go.
Yeah. So what was kind of cool about Rita is, well, first off, I didn't like that we went onto the Gator, so it kind of killed our crew day some. But one thing that we did that was really neat was we launched on the backside of the storm. As the storm was moving through, we were moving in as it was moving off. So we were actually flying in 65, 70 knot winds coming in on the backside of the storm.
Wow.
And I can remember looking over at the other aircraft that had one of my good friends in it, Christopher Kasperzik. And, he wasn't with me at Katrina, but, we were flying in and I could see him in the other aircraft as we were flying in. It was pretty amazing situation. The devastation there was, it was completely different. And, I'll go ahead and say that it was different in the aspect of if you were to look at Western Louisiana, Eastern Texas, where Rita hit further to the west, there were some coastal areas where like the houses were just gone. They were swept off their foundations. Luckily, it didn't hit right at Katrina, because I think had it hit that same exact area and caused more levee damage, I don't think New Orleans could have taken it, but it hit further to the west. Bouncing back to awards a little bit, I'd like, I only want to say this because I think awards and how they go out, it's never equitable. In our wing, we were able to have discussions with all the leadership in our wing, and get all the COs in one room. And we were like, look, if anybody's flying in this environment, it's not a normal environment. If they're flying in this environment and they conducted rescues, they deserve an air medal. And our wing did that, so great for our guys. Occasionally there were some that met the wicket, and it's always a challenge when you're dealing with awards, especially when you deal with awards and egos. So right. You've got awards, you've got egos, and I even heard a commanding officer say, I can't believe these guys are going to get an award that's higher than any that I have. So that was not my commanding officer, I'm happy to say, but in the award piece, that is one of the things that's viewed. Now, the reason I raise this is the East Coast lamps, all of our guys got air medals, as they deserve it. On the West Coast, they decided they were going to give out NAMs. So, I would just like to highlight, it's not that East Coast guys did anything more. It's just we weren't all underneath the same umbrella.
Right.
And when it weighs out, it's difficult. Our Commodore, I think, was very smart when it came to the Navy Marine Corps. I think there were 8 write-ups that were up for it. And
wow.
What our Commodore did was he assembled a board of people around the base. He went and got officers from different places. They read the award manual, and then they read the write-up, and he had these impartial people that were able to say, this meets this wicket or it doesn't meet this wicket. And that way, I think in the end, I think the 4 that were approved were the only 4 that he pushed through based off of the recommendations of the board that he convened prior to sending these off to the awards board, which I think, our Commodore is very wise in doing that.
Yeah, man, that's well. And I've said it before, I'll say it again. We don't do this for awards. It's just nice to have the recognition for when you go above and beyond the abnormal rescue, the abnormal situation. And it's like, oh, well, thank you. I appreciate you guys realizing that, we're going out for something a little obscure. So
They seem important when you're in, sometimes for advancement, but the reality is I couldn't even tell you where mine are now.
yeah, like most of
I
us,
have no
it's in a
idea.
box in the garage or in the
Yeah.
attic.
Yeah. You know, that
Yeah.
that was the old me. It was a long time ago. You know, I always tried to do what was right. I'm sure I got a lot of it wrong, but you know, you have the
Yeah.
wisdom. You know, you gain wisdom as you get older and you see things through a different perspective lens.
Totally. Totally. Yeah. That's funny. Well,
Yeah.
for Rita, is there anything else that you got on Rita or?
No, I would say that, you know, after Katrina, Rita was really pretty, well, it would have been amazing standing on its own 2 weeks after Katrina. It didn't really seem like too much.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's like when you go to the amusement park and you ride the hardest badass roller coaster in the entire
Yeah.
park, and then everything else is like, that's all right. Even though
Yeah.
they're amazing.
Then you're in the spinning teacups going,
Yeah. Oh, it's funny. Well,
So-
you know what? Again, good job for you and your crews, even into Rita. I know you guys were, you know, when you're pulled into one crazy event and then 2 weeks later, you don't even have time to really debrief and reset, and you're thrown into the next one. It's you know, it's go time. So props. Well done.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So post my military career, I started working for the Department of Defense as a weapons and tactics instructor.
Which
I
helps
still
since you were a weapons and tactics instructor over in Japan. Well done.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice.
So I've been doing the weapons and tactics thing since I got out working for a company for the Department of Defense. And then a few years ago, I got a call from a good friend of mine, and he asked me if I wanted to go do some security during disasters. So it was kind of a very strange scenario. And I'll go ahead and say, initially I was like, nah. Then he said, how much for? And I was like, all right, I'm in.
Well done.
So I took leave from my regular job and I went to do this, and we went to North Carolina, and it was severe flooding. And literally within, I would say 20 minutes, a small group of people that I was with had morphed the mission of the company that we were hired by. We were supposed to just guard generators and fuel trucks, and it rapidly turned into, can you locate teammates and locate patients for a particular company?
Wow.
Yeah, so we were going to houses, searching houses. We were driving. We actually turned to utilizing our four-wheel drive vehicles, and we would have one vehicle and we'd have a chase vehicle. And when the front vehicle's rear bumper touched the water, it was the chase vehicle's job to tell them they had to turn around, trying to get through floodwaters to different areas.
Jeez.
Yeah, I mean, so it was pretty extreme. Year following that, we stood up Cerberus Dynamic Solutions because we saw all the things that were being done by that other company that either we were pretty sure they didn't have the correct insurance policies, and we realized that we had a lot of skills that translated into that.
Very cool. So that's who you're working with now?
That's our company, Cerberus Dynamic Solutions.
Nice.
I have a partner, Joseph Sabia, and we primarily focus on just disaster relief, getting in there and doing high risk stuff during disasters.
Wow. Nice. It's amazing. Like, and you saw it firsthand from Katrina too, is like the need for that. So
yeah, well, what it really stood out to me was when you got in that environment and you're looking around at the people who are local to there, they're all dealing with the worst day of their life. And when you've been used to working in that type of environment, but you're not affected by it, you're coming in to do a job, it makes it relatively easy for you to perform at a high level because your house isn't destroyed, because you know, you didn't just lose your job. So our ability to operate in that environment and the people that I had access to, it really lent the things going very well. I'll go ahead and say, you know, we just hire, during disasters, we hire former rescue swimmers, former Rangers, SEALs, Green Berets. You know, we just have a large swath highly skilled individuals. And what I like to really say about the people that we've brought in is, I know I can put them somewhere, and whether they can communicate with us or not, they will make the right decision because of who we hire.
Wow. Nice. Yeah. Cut from a different cloth. That's awesome.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But that's pretty much what I've had going post that event.
Man, awesome. Ken, geez. I have taken so much of your time. This is crazy.
Yeah. Man, I think I've said probably enough, maybe even too much. But
it's all good.
I'm just glad that we got people out there today that are, able to pick up the torch and carry it forward. When us old guys get to be too old to do the job, or, we're no longer in that position.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, me too. I hope to keep going as long as I could possibly, as my body will allow me to go. That's what I'm hoping.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, Ken, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on, and just listening to your entire career and running into Katrina and Rita. Man, what a way to finish this off. Thank you. And with what you're doing now, keep going. It's amazing. So well done.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll be in touch with you at one point or another. We'll go grab a beer together. That's what I'm talking about.
Sounds good. Sounds
awesome.
good. Anytime you're back.
You got it, man. Awesome. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we are out of here. Go. Thank you for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Real ResQ Podcast. Please take a minute to like, subscribe, and hit that share button. I'm pulling chocks and taking off. But before I go, if anyone out there has a rescue story they would be willing to share, I would be humbled and honored to have you on as a guest. Or if you have any questions about rescue or anything else we talk about here, send an email to jason@therealresq.com. That's Jason at TheRealResq.com. You can also check us out on our web pages, therealresq.com, our Facebook page, and our Instagram page @TheRealResQ. Again, a special thank you to all of you staying on the watch today. Always remember, when that SAR alarm goes off, those in distress are praying for a miracle. They are going to get you. Until next time, fly safe and swim hard.